Welcome to the Hearts Entwined podcast. In this podcast, we'll be having discussions around the secrets which attract lasting, healthy, fulfilling relationships, creating a healthy mindset, and what women should know and understand about men. Introducing your host, Lyn Smith, the Queen of Hearts, relationship expert, trainer, speaker, and best-selling author of the Cupid's Bow technique. Lyn's mission is to have a positive impact in reducing divorce, domestic violence, and suicide.
Welcome to the Hearts Entwined podcast. This is your host, Lyn Smith, the Queen of Hearts. And today, listeners, I've got Nicole Monteiro, and she is a psychologist and boundaries coach. So very warm welcome to you, Nicole.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
And I am too, because Nicole is an expert and specializes in particular in the area of boundaries. And we thought it'd be great to do a podcast episode today around having healthy boundaries that are not necessarily too strict or not necessarily too lax, so that we can help women be more in their feminine energy and understand how that can actually enhance and improve and create balance in relationships, and also that passion and intimacy as well. So Nicole, over to you. What actually, for the benefit of the audience, got you involved in this particular area of relationships?
Well, it started off through my work with clients in therapy. So as you mentioned, I'm a psychologist, and I've done therapy with people for more than 2 decades. And there were certain trends that I started noticing, especially with my female clients or clients who came in with for couples therapy. And so it just really started me thinking, like, what at the core is going on? And I found that a lot of people had difficulty having healthy boundaries. As you mentioned, I like to talk about balanced boundaries, and we could talk a little bit about that. But I also found that a lot of women were struggling with burnout, but also feeling like they weren't connected to their feminine energy or their sense of femininity, and feeling comfortable in that as a woman. So it really made me kind of think how they're all connected and put together.
That's so interesting, because a lot of my clients, if they haven't really worked or have heard of me before, sometimes haven't even known about feminine energy, because we're not educated or parented around this stuff, are we?
We are not at all. And it's a tragedy.
And
I talk to so many women who, I'm sorry.
Sorry, no, go ahead.
I was going to say, I literally am in conversations with women like all the time, and they're like, I never knew this. And I'm like, yeah, it's, in a lot of traditional cultures, this is implicit knowledge that's just passed down through the way people do things and the way people interact. But in a lot of the, Western, more modern societies, because there's been so much like rapid change in gender roles, a lot of that knowledge, while there's been a lot of progress, a lot of the important knowledge about who we are and our power as women and our feminine energy has been just lost.
Absolutely. And, I think there's been a lot of misunderstanding and misinformation as well delivered on along the way. So for you, Nicole, what is it that you actually can share with our audience around how to balance our boundaries to create that bliss within relationships?
Well, first, I would say, get out of your mind the idea that boundaries are as simple as saying no. I know that's kind of what's going around. There's a lot of attention and talk about boundaries these days. And people are like, I'm setting boundaries. It's a no. No is a complete sentence. And while those things might be true, right? There's truth to them. That's not the whole picture. And boundaries is really this system of yeses and nos, because it's a dynamic thing. What might be a healthy boundary in one relationship might not be the same healthy boundary in a different relationship, or it might change over time. So it's really about understanding your system of yeses and nos and what you're comfortable with and how you're going to communicate that. And so that's where I coach a lot of women around like best ways to communicate, best ways to be able to stand up for themselves, but to not do it in a way, a lot of us do it in a way that's from a very sort of survival mode. Like, I've got to protect myself and I've got to tell people no. And we want to get people to a place where they're more balanced within. So the yes or the no isn't so pressured, right? We don't want to be at a point where we're backed up against the wall and saying no. We want to understand what needs to take place in that relationship before we even get to that point where we feel so cornered. So it's really like a holistic way. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. I 100% agree, because I think there's a difference between coming across aggressive, more in masculine energy, let's say, from a point of saying how we say no, to, saying it from, our intuitive heart center, and from that loving place of our most empowered feminine energy.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And to let that be okay. There's so many people thinking that being direct and aggressive is the only way to communicate, not understanding the power in what you said, that more intuitive, that more, you can be sometimes a little more nuanced in how you say things. And sometimes that will have more power than that hard and fast, like masculine way.
Yeah. So can you give us some examples then of what you talk about in terms of boundaries? Because some people don't even know what boundaries are, do they? And
no.
So I think it's important to give some examples to explain, to the listener that might not be sure of what they need to think about in relation to boundaries.
Yeah. So what's one thing to think about is, what are you comfortable with? So it could be in a friendship, it could be in a family relationship, an intimate relationship. And so if you find yourself constantly agreeing to things that you don't want to, and then later on feeling angry, resentful, sort of like just stressed out, stretched thin, that's probably a sign you need to work on your boundaries. And you need to think about how you can both say what you want and what's important for you, and know that the relationship can still be preserved. Because a lot of us think that unless we're constantly pleasing someone else or not disappointing them, then the relationship is going to fall apart. So an example would be if a friend asks you to go out and you really just don't feel like it, that you could just say, this isn't a good time for me. Or someone says, I really need you to do this for me. You've always done it for me, right? Someone calls you in the middle of the night to pick them up from the airport. And it's okay to say, like, this is not a good time for me. And to know that the relationship will survive. Because I think for a lot of us, the fear is that the person will reject us or won't want us anymore if we kind of state what we want. And then on the other hand, though, there's people who are so rigid, right? That's in that masculine where they don't have any flexibility. It's like, I said no, and that's it. They don't have any wiggle room. And that kind of keeps you in a different space of like putting up walls where you can't really connect to people.
Yeah, and I think, sometimes on the back of past hurts, heartbreaks and trauma, that is quite commonplace, because we do it, don't we, to keep people at arm's length and not wanting then to open our heart in case we get hurt in the future. But the thing is that if we do want love, and I think we all want true love and we all want true healthy love and passion, we've got to risk opening our hearts and like you say, allowing a bit of flexibility within what boundaries we set as well within that.
I love the word risk. I always tell people there's nothing that you can't get, that thing, that love, that passion, that thing that's so fulfilling without a bit of risk, without putting something on the line, without allowing yourself to be a little on the not safe side that you're typically used to. So that word, like healthy risk, is so important, because people think, well, I'm not going to be vulnerable until I know for sure. And that absolutely is not the definition of vulnerability.
No, and it's certainly not opening your heart either. All you'll have, I think, if you're going to be guarded all the time and, wait to see and have people jump through hoops, is that you're setting yourself up for failure, really, aren't you?
Yeah, I just chuckled at because I literally know people who say I set up hoops for him to jump through before I can be sure.
Give it an example of some of the things you've heard so that the audience can relate around that.
So it's like, unless, he shows he's going to pay for this and that he's always going to set up the date and call me first and, show me that he's absolutely into me, I'm not going to let my guard down at all. And it's like, you've got to think that even though a masculine man is expected to kind of be decisive or whatever, he still has feelings and fears of rejection too. So if you're asking for someone to put everything on the line in terms of whether it's financially or putting themselves out there to show how they feel about you, and you're not going to do anything until they do like this list of 10 things, then you're really not being honest about how human, it's a give and take, right? So people are literally saying that they're expecting a person to pay for everything, reach out first, follow up first, like literally do everything to show their interest before they're going to reciprocate.
And that is hard, because energetically a man's going to feel the weight of that expectation, isn't he? And that's not going to be attractive.
No, it's not. And it's not showing the level of empathy and nurturance that is part of our feminine energy that also pulls that out of the masculinity.
The thing is, I think a lot of women, especially if they are quite headstrong and used to being in what I refer to as masculine energy. And what I mean by masculine energy is being the one that wants to be in control all the time and wants to put him through hoops and wants to keep him at arm's length until he's proved himself. Some of those things aren't energetically being picked up by the man as being attractive traits, and then they wonder why they're not attracting the really strong, healthy, masculine males that they really want.
Exactly. Exactly. I hear so many people saying, well, I'll be soft when I find a man that's worthy of it. And I'm like, no, then you're never going to attract it, because that softness, that feminine energy, that has to be organic to you. And that's what attracts the masculine energy you're looking for, but it can't just be dependent. Now, I'm not saying go out and just be completely vulnerable and again, that's where boundaries come in, right? And just have no discernment. You just choose anyone and, you're completely vulnerable. But you got to know that what is attractive is that feminine energy, that softness, that ability to go with the flow and not always want to control things.
Absolutely. So where do people start in terms of, looking at whether they've got too strong boundaries or too weak boundaries or no boundaries at all? Where do you sort of help them start to see where they're at?
So I actually have people do a quiz. I think it's like a fun way to kind of gauge and get people thinking. So I have, quizzes. I have a masculine, feminine energy quiz, a boundaries quiz, and a relationship readiness quiz that gets people to it presents different examples and like, what would you do? And so it gets people thinking like, that thing that I might have thought was good for me because I have been disappointed or heartbroken or traumatized before, maybe that thing isn't quite working for me now that I'm in a more healed or trying to be in a more healed space. So I get people to do quizzes. And then I literally talk to them. Like once a woman comes and decides to work with me directly in one of my programs, we do a full life assessment to see where she is and what she wants for herself.
Well, would you be able to recall what was on the quiz to do with boundaries? Give an example of somebody who's probably got no boundaries as against somebody who's got too strict boundaries.
So someone with no boundaries, it's about, first of all, are you constantly feeling angry and resentful? Are you feeling like you're complaining of feeling drained and burnt out, stretched thin, those words, overwhelmed, constantly? Do you feel like you never have what you need for yourself, either time or resources, money to do what you need? And those are 3 key areas that are like clues that you're putting too much out and you don't have the boundaries to keep what you need for yourself. So it's almost like it's the result of how you feel that is the real clue. And then, of course, things like, are you constantly saying yes? Are you constantly overriding how you feel inside to please somebody else? Are you constantly, rolling your eyes after you give an answer because you wish you had never agreed to that in the first place? Now, with the 2 you asked on the other end, I call it putting up barriers versus boundaries. It's if you feel like you're lacking the kind of connection that you really want with people. So you have people in your life, people respect you, people don't cross you, right? But you're wondering why you don't see the same sort of warmness or connection that you might see some other friends or other people in your life have with each other. That's a sign that people literally know not to cross you, but then you're missing out on what you could get by having them closer, right? Does that make sense? So some signs of that are you're never saying yes. You don't have anyone that you would want to share the things that you have with, because you're distrustful, right? You're feeling like you can't have the kind of spontaneous conversations or call on people the way that you might need to sometimes.
Yeah, I've had people that have been definitely on both sides of that fence. So what then is the solution regarding the middle ground then to create that balance of boundaries?
So it really is about developing trust in yourself and allowing, I tell every woman, you will never sort of become who you really want to be as a woman without some discomfort. So on the side of too loose boundaries, you have got to start getting comfortable with disappointing people being mad at you, or whatever it is that they're going to express once you start setting, healthier boundaries. You're just going to have to go through that. It's literally like it's part of the process. So it's trusting yourself and being okay with feeling a bit uncomfortable. And on the other side too, if you're too rigid, you're going to have to start getting in that space of vulnerability that's going to feel uncomfortable. It's like reaching out and telling somebody you have a need. That comes with the risk of rejection, right? Because what if the person says, who cares? I don't care, right? But that's the risk you have to take in order to connect and move to a healthier place. So both of them require getting out of your comfort zone, quite literally.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing that a lot of people are reluctant to do, isn't it? Because even if it's not healthy for us, I think we tend to want to stick with what's familiar and comfortable.
Yes, that is the human tendency. So we're kind of asking you to do something that probably isn't normal by going out of your comfort zone, but is so rewarding at the end of the day.
Yeah, I can really vouch for that. I'm a woman that's been through a 23-year marriage, which was happy, ish. There wasn't any aggression in that marriage. It was just I felt a bit unfulfilled would be the right word. I just felt like there was something missing in terms of there wasn't a great lot of passion. I mean, we did have intimacy, but there wasn't a great lot of passion, and I didn't realize that I was responsible for that because of my previous history in that I'd got those barriers up, and then wondered why I wasn't experiencing the intimacy and the passion that I was really craving. And then I've been through a relationship where the opposite has been true, where I've been too much the other way and people pleasing and not had no boundaries, almost to my detriment to experience behavior that wasn't actually acceptable, but thinking, oh, well, I'll be the bigger person, and be forgiving in this situation when actually it warranted me saying something.
Wow, I love hearing that story, like, because it's really taking ownership of the part you played in it. And like, I feel like that's what we all have to do, especially as women, because if we wait on somebody else to give us permission or say, oh, well, this is what I want, this is what's good for you, it's never going to happen. We have to be the ones to do it ourselves. So it's really like, to hear your story is so powerful, actually.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that.
Mm-hmm.
And that I had a long 10-year relationship with my ex-partner. We've still got an amicable relationship, but I know within that, I went from one extreme to the other in terms of accepting behavior that wasn't acceptable, and as I said, too far the other way, just because I was, my responsibility in that was, I'm going to be the bigger person, I'm going to forgive it, when actually, you're teaching him to keep giving you the behavior that you actually don't find acceptable.
Yeah, exactly.
Within that, and then you're wondering why it keeps happening. And so that was a big lesson learned for me too.
And you said in your marriage, you would say that previous relationships made it hard for you to like open up. Is that what you were saying?
Well, I think most of my audience know my own personal story, and that is I went through a couple of serious sexual assaults in my teens, which made me very closed off. So that was my personal trauma and history that sort of led to me sort of being the way I was within that marriage.
Well, in my practice, like my therapy practice, I specialize in working with women who have a history of trauma. And so one of the outcomes is that it does affect your access to your feminine energy and your boundaries and so forth because of, what happened. And so getting to that place of being healed allows you to get to the next level of thriving, whether it's in your relationships or how you see yourself. So yeah, I think that's just part of the whole process.
Absolutely. So any other tips and pieces of advice you give to the listeners around creating balance around boundaries to create your bliss in relationships, Nicole?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
Any other words of wisdom to share with the audience around how to create balance within boundaries to create bliss within your future relationships or current relationships?
Yes, I would say really take time out to like work on yourself, whether that's journaling, whether that's taking time out to meditate or for mindfulness, and like really just getting in touch with your own feelings. I love two things that I think are so practical that you could do are journaling and going out for walks where it's just you and nature or whatever it is around you, and time to reflect. Reflection is one of the best ways to tap back into your feminine energy and that intuitive part of yourself, and to empower that part of yourself. So those are just things that you could literally start today. You could literally start doing today. Other than that, I have a great program called the Boundaries to Bliss 30-day bootcamp. And we literally work on getting your boundaries more balanced so you can have those blissful, fulfilling relationships. I also have a book called The Boundaries to Bliss Blueprint for women who are finally ready to win at love. And it gives some really practical tips on bridging that gap from healing to actually thriving in your life and in your relationships.
Excellent. I love that. So what is the best contact information that you can share with the audience should they want to work with you or find out more information about the programs and book you've just shared?
So you could find me on Instagram. I'm pretty active there. I respond to messages, and it's at Chad Wellness is my handle. ChadWellness. And that is my Instagram handle.
Thank you so much, Nicole. It's been a real great pleasure to have you on today talking about how to balance our boundaries to create the bliss in our current or future relationships. I've found it a fascinating conversation, and I really appreciate your sharing your experience and wisdom on today's podcast episode.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. I really enjoyed this discussion.
So on that note, listeners, remember that true love starts with opening our hearts. And until next time, goodbye for now.
Thanks for listening to the Hearts Entwined podcast. You can follow Lyn via the Facebook group Two Hearts Entwined, or search Lyn Smith, inspirational speaker, at LinkedIn, or email lyn@hearts-entwined.com. That's LYN@hearts-entwined.com. Remember, true love starts with opening our hearts.